If there was one trend that has completely taken over the nail industry in the last 2 years, it's 3D nail art. It's what hooked me and got me into making nails 3 years ago. I was instantly obsessed with the endless possibilities of what you could create on such a tiny little canvas. I was also, however, entirely overwhelmed and lost with how to go about making 3D nail art. What do I even search for? What are the best products? And where do I even find those products? So I did what any chill ADHD girly would do. I went on a full-blown internet deep dive for months. Today, I'm sharing everything I've learned about making 3D nails to save you from the same anguish. So let's go through the key products, tools, and techniques I use to make 3D nail art. 3D nail products come in an incredible range of viscosities, opacities, and colors, with each marketed for specific uses. You will hear terms like builder gel, sculptor gel, deco gel, embossing gel, texture gel, clay, thick gel, and more. Despite all of these different and frankly inconsistent marketing terms, I've grouped products that I use to make 3D nail art into the following categories that hopefully makes it a little bit more clear. Builder gels and top coats, embossing gels and powders, UV clay and sculpting gels, silicone molds, acrylics and polygel, texture gel, and pre-made charms. I'm going to go through these product categories one at a time, explain best use cases, tools needed, how to apply the products, and some of my favorite tips and techniques along the way. Quick caveat to say that I do not think that I am the master of 3D nail art, but for some reason I have been sent to explain. So let's get into it. Please, after this video, go look up all the highly talented and skilled nail artists who are making insane, exceptional, detailed, intricate 3D nail art. For now, you've got me. Oh. Builder gels and top coats aren't always marketed for 3D nails, but honestly, they're one of the most versatile products you can have in your kit. The key is finding a gel with a really high viscosity. This means that it's super thick, doesn't have much flow, and holds its shape, making it perfect for creating those juicy raised designs like dewdrops, shell texture, and even 3D characters. In my mind, you can use high viscosity builder gels and top coats in 4 different ways. On their own, for kind of a clear water droplet effect, over color to give you that candy-coated glossy finish. You can cure them and then paint it, or you can mix pigment or color gel into the builder gel or top coat. The only tool I generally use to work with these gels is a medium thickness short liner brush. To pick up the gel, I gently use my brush to scoop up more product than I think I'll need. To apply it to the nail, I move slowly. This gel is thick, so don't rush it. I hold the brush about 1 centimeter away from the nail and allow the gel to flow down, slowly guiding it from above. Once you've applied the gel, you can make little adjustments to the shape with the tip of your brush. If you feel like the gel is getting unruly, I flip my nail upside down to kind of pull all of the gel to the center to reset it. And once I'm satisfied with the shape, I immediately flash cure. Flash curing is going to be a theme throughout this whole video, but especially for a product like this that has some flow to it, I flash cure between every single element, otherwise they bleed together. Once you're happy with your shape, you can either paint details on top or leave it as is, and then go ahead and top coat. If you're using the built-in brush from a bottle of top coat, often the bristles are quite soft, making it hard to scrape excess product from around your 3D element. So if keeping the detail and dimension of a 3D element is important to me, I'll opt for a brush with shorter and firmer bristles, allowing me to scrape away some of that excess product, leaving me with a super thin layer of top coat. If you want to take this concept even further, to get the ultimate thinnest layer, you can apply a little bit of top coat with a sponge, or use a sponge to remove some of the top coat you've already applied. Embossing gels are specifically formulated to make 3D nail art and are great for creating raised, opaque designs with soft, kind of rounded edges. Embo gels are highly viscous and are pre-colored, making them super convenient for creating 3D elements straight from the pot. Some Embo gels even come in tube packaging, making them that much easier to apply and control. Embossing gels are perfect for creating soft, dimensional 3D shapes like characters, raised objects, or abstract art. In terms of consistency, Embo gels run a little bit more on the viscous side compared to builder gels and top coats. That said, I still reach for the same tool to apply them, a short, thick liner brush. I scoop up some of the product onto my brush, again working really slowly to avoid air bubbles. Once I have enough on my brush, I let gravity do a bit of work before I place it down onto the nail, so it all kind of lands in one glob, if you will. You'll notice me do these movements a lot throughout this video. The first is to bounce the product onto the nail and get it off of my brush, and then second, to kind of twirl the brush a little bit to break the string of gel. Once I've placed the product down, I'll use the tip of my brush to pull the product and refine the shape. And then again, I flip it upside down to let gravity do the work and get that really smooth overall centered sphere. Then we flash cure. Embogels are wonderful because they're pre-colored and you know they're going to cure all the way through, but it's also kind of a con because you are limited by the colors that you own. Embogels are great at these little details because the viscosity is so high they don't move as much. Even still, I'm going to flash cure between each element. One thing I will note is that in this video, I'm making a lot of like round shapes, all these heads and ears, but if you want to do an abnormal shape, so let's say a 3D croissant, and you want that crescent shape, I recommend instead of going in with all the product at one time, as I'm doing here, first kind of painting down a thin layer in the shape that you want, almost like a slip layer, and then going back in with additional gel before you cure that first layer and placing it on top. It just makes it easier to manage and less unruly with abnormal shapes. Here I'm switching to a tube Embogel, and you can really see how easy it is to just apply the amount that you need. And then to shape it, I'm actually dipping my brush in just a little bit of alcohol, which allows me to shape the object a little bit better without pulling the product too far in any one direction. I only use the alcohol trick once the main shape is in place and I want to make like really tiny little adjustments. Here you can start to see how detailed you can get a design by just slowly building up your layers. After I fully cure the whole design, I can paint the details on top, cure that, and then once again apply top coat. Okay, here's my last pitch on Embogels in tube format. A couple things. One, they're often non-wipe, meaning you can either apply chrome on top or you can just leave them on top of the nail without even needing to top coat them. Two, they're just so easy to apply. If you've seen me struggle to pick up the amount of product I need, bounce it off of my brush, and then like try to break off the gel on the tip of my brush, it's just more challenging to like master that than it is to squeeze out these tubes. And then finally, you get way more product in a tube Embogel. Normally they come in like 10 grams versus potted ones, which are maybe 5 or 6 grams. That's my 2 cents. Embossing powder is an additive that can be mixed into just about any gel to customize its viscosity and texture. They allow you to increase the viscosity of your existing gels, making them thicker for a raised or textured effect. The way that I use it is to, one, create custom Embogels, mix it into color gel for that raised oil painting look, or to create a grittier texture like snow or sand. The tools you'll need is something to scoop the product out of the container and then something to mix the powder into your existing gel. Start with a small amount of powder and gradually mix more in to achieve your desired consistency. You can kind of experiment with different ratios. One thing I will note is that if you want to create your own Embogels like I'm doing here by mixing a thick top coat, Embogel, and a little bit of color, is to be really conservative with the amount of color gel that you're using. Otherwise, there's a chance that your design won't cure all the way through. If I'm making my own Embogel, I treat it as such, and so the application is the exact same as I would with the Embogel, though I do find it is a little bit runnier, so I have to work a bit quicker with it. And then for the raised oil paint look, you can see I'm increasing the amount of powder I've added into the gel, so it's quite a bit thicker. I don't really do anything special, I just paint it on as I would any sort of texture gel. And cure as I go and layer if I want to. UV clay and sculpting gels are game changers for creating highly detailed and intricate 3D nail art. They are both solid materials, allowing you to sculpt and mold shapes with precision and hold. So what's the difference between the two? UV clay has a firmer, pre-colored, moldable texture, while sculpting gel is slightly softer, stretchier, and often translucent or transparent. I group them together because the use cases, application method, and techniques are very similar. The use cases for these products are genuinely endless, but I tend to reach for them if I'm trying to create a highly intricate design, make a fully custom nail charm that's perfectly sculpted to the nail, anything that is sharp and clean lines, and then any design where you need height and hold that otherwise wouldn't be possible with other products. You'll need a clean spatula and a dust-free palette or surface, a small firm brush or silicone tool to help precisely shape and refine the design, and then 70% alcohol or higher to help with sticking and smoothing out edges. To apply, scoop a small amount of the product out with your spatula and place it on a dust-free surface. Recently, I've been using the back of my glove. Work the product into a general shape, think balls and cylinders, before applying it to the nail. Gently place and press the clay or sculpting gel onto the nail using a brush or silicone tool. Sculpt the product until you're happy with the result. Add texture by gently pressing with different tools. You can mix clay colors together to get your desired color, or with sculpting gel, you can simply mix pigment into the gel. Even though clay and sculpting gels hold their shape so beautifully, I still flash cure between elements just to make sure that nothing budges as I'm building on layers. One little tip with clay is that if you use some alcohol on a brush before you cure it, you can kind of melt the shape into other shapes that are next to it. So for instance, with the stem of those cherries, I can kind of make it look like one piece rather than it being two separate pieces, because otherwise it's hard to sculpt a piece that's that shape. You can make two pieces and then kind of melt them together. So just another example, I want to sculpt a heart, so I start with a general shape, which is a ball. I place it on the nail, I pat it down, and then I refine the shape using my tools, and in this instance, I am embedding a little pearl inside. If you've been catching on to a mini theme here, I've been sculpting a teddy bear with almost every product, and this is because I wanted to show that you technically can create the same thing with all of these products. The how you get there and the end result does obviously vary, but it's kind of up to your discretion of what you like working with, and what end result you're going for. So here are the 8 bears I made, all with different products. At the end of the video, I'll tell you which one's which, but if you're smart and following along, you should be able to guess. One word to the wise with clay, and I keep forgetting this lesson, I made this mistake while creating this bear, is once cured, you don't really want to mess with clay. So you don't want to take alcohol to it, you don't want to file it, or it will give it this like kind of bleached look and you can't get it back to the original color. So don't make my mistake, leave it alone once cured. Let's briefly talk about sculpting gel. One of the main differences between clay and sculpting gel is that sculpting gel is quite a bit stretchier and stickier, which just means that the way I handle this product is slightly different to the way I handle clay. I generally keep alcohol close by to put it on my glove or the surface I'm working on, and on my tools to keep this product from sticking. These gels also tend to be stickier the warmer they are, so if you've been manipulating it on the back of your glove and rolling it out with your finger, just give it a single second to rest and cool down before you try to pick it up and place it on the nail. And when you do pick it up, I recommend just having a little bit of alcohol on whatever tool you're picking it up with. Otherwise, when you try to place it down, your tool is actually going to pull the product with it instead of it sticking to the nail. Honestly, these gels are kind of a pain in the ass to work with. I'm forever on the hunt for ones that aren't sticky. What you're seeing here is actually a hard sculpting gel. I think maybe meant to be used with dual forms, but it works just like a sculpting gel and it's not sticky. So I don't know what these other companies and products are doing. It's possible to make one. Alas, I can't say no to a pearl sculpting gel, it's too pretty. As I mentioned, the application of sculpting gels is really similar to clay. I'll roll it a general shape, I'll then place it on the nail and sculpt it and refine with my tools. A technique or strategy that I'm not really going to touch on too much in this video, but is really important to keep in mind, is that you also have the option to build elements off of the actual nail itself. So you can either build them on a test nail in advance, or you can build them on a flat surface depending on the shape you're trying to create. And you could have multiple elements, glue them together, or place them together on the nail after being cured off of the nail. For example, I did this with the sprinkles on my cake nails that I made. I wanted them obviously to be perfectly spherical. Again, I'm only doing spheres in this video, but you can make any shape you want. You are the builder, the architect, the visionary. Silicone molds are an effective way to create consistent, intricate 3D nail designs without needing advanced sculpting skills. They come in various shapes and sizes. You are, however, limited by the shapes of the molds you own. In terms of use cases, silicone molds are perfect for creating uniform shapes. If you've ever tried to sculpt a star by hand, you know. And small or highly detailed raised designs that would otherwise take a long time to sculpt by hand. The tools you'll need are a low viscosity gel or resin, a detail brush or dotting tool, lint-free wipes or a clean brush and alcohol, nail glue or builder gel to secure the charm to the nail, and tweezers or a wax stick. To get the best results, make sure your mold is clean before filling it with anything. If I feel like I need to clean it, I'll just wipe it down with a lint-free wipe and some alcohol. I then decide whether I'm going to use gel or resin to fill the mold. I'll normally reach for resin for deeper and simpler shapes. Especially with the deeper shapes, I just find that resin cures better than gel does. They normally have a convenient nozzle, making it easy to fill the molds, and then also it's often cheaper than gel. Resin charms are really hard and durable, and the last benefit is that when they come out clean with no inhibition layer. On the other side of things, if I have a highly detailed multicolored design, I'll reach for gel. But whether working with gel or resin, it's important to flip your mold over and have a look at the backside before you cure anything to make sure that there's no air bubbles. I'll use a detail brush or dotting tool to kind of push the gel into those cracks and crevices and get the air bubbles out. The other thing I check for before curing is that there's no overflow outside of the mold itself. Otherwise, I'll have to file those bits off after I cure it, so I'll normally wipe those away with a little alcohol and lint-free wipe or a brush. I do one color at a time, flash curing in between to make sure there's no bleed between colors. Once fully cured, I will gently remove the charms from the mold and try not to throw them across the room or break them. But if I break them, no big deal, I'll glue them back together on the nail. I will then either apply glue in the shape of the charm that I've made, or I will cover the whole nail with a layer of builder gel and then press my charm into that gel and cure it. Back to the benefits of using gel for molds. Gel prefers to be painted than resin, so with any design where I want to add depth, dimension, or details on top afterwards, I'll often reach for gel. One downside to molds is that depending on the shape and size of the charm you're making, it's not always going to fit the curve of your nail perfectly. And so when you're top coating, I'll add a little bit more top coat to the edges of these designs to make sure that I've encapsulated any free edges that might otherwise get caught on hair or on clothes. Acrylics and polygels. Acrylics are a classic material that is still widely used to create 3D nail art. While I personally don't use them often, mainly because of the smell, I'd be remiss not to mention them as a trusted and effective method for 3D designs. In terms of use cases, I would reach for acrylics and polygels when trying to make sculptural elements like claws or spikes. Acrylics also work for highly detailed designs like character art or flowers, and then also encapsulation. The tools you'll need are an acrylic brush. This is literally the only acrylic brush I own. I dip my brush into the monomer, take a little bit of the liquid off, and then dip it in the powder to form a bead. Because I'm once again trying to sculpt a bear, I didn't want the acrylic to run very far because I wanted some height, and so I kept the bead quite dry and then slowly sculpted it into the shape I wanted. As I mentioned, this is literally the second time I had ever touched liquid and powder acrylic, so you're watching an absolute amateur at work, and I was just figuring it out as I went. Though it kind of opened my eyes to what's possible with this material. It's just incredibly versatile, and you can really build anything you want if you can handle the smell. One downside is you are limited by the colors you own, so you either have to paint the end result or buy a bunch of different acrylic colors. But as I was working with these materials, I realized I could finally see through a design that I've had in my head for a really long time, which is to replicate the Glossier U bottle on a nail. And by building structure up on the nail and being able to feather out this material, I realized I could then create negative space by pushing into the semi-dried acrylic before it fully had time to cure and harden. So I started by kind of creating an apex on the nail and then feathering it out to the tip where I wanted it to be clear. And then just before it had fully cured, I pushed into the acrylic to create that kind of like thumbprint shape. And this is a design that would have been almost impossible with any other product. And so it's a great example of different materials have different strengths. And here acrylic was the perfect choice for this 3D design. On the other hand, polygel is a hybrid nail product that combines the best features of acrylic and gel. I group it with liquid and powder acrylic because the use cases are similar in terms of its ability to build strong structures and shapes. Texture gels, sometimes referred to as frosting gels, icing gels, or nuanced gels, are specifically formulated to create raised, textured effects on nails. Unlike builder gels or sculpting gels, texture gels are designed to hold their shape loosely, making them perfect for creating organic patterns and textures. I'll reach for texture gels when I want to create a raised pattern like tweed or embossed lace, for added volume for things like water or whipped cream or icing. Many texture gels are also non-wipe, making them perfect as a base for any abstract chrome art. You can also mix color gels into your texture gels, similar to the Embo powder color gel combo. You kind of get that oil painting look. You don't actually need any tools to use texture gels. You can go straight into the pot with your brush of choice. In terms of techniques, the only thing I would consider is the type of brush you're picking up will obviously affect how you're able to apply the product. The amount of product you pick up will determine how it lays on the nail, and then finally the pressure you apply to the brush that you pick will also determine the end result. There's really no right or wrong. Play around with it, color it, layer it, put chrome on top, see what you make. The The last category I wanted to make mention of is pre-made charms. There are literally thousands out there on the internet. You can get kind of swept up in it and feel like you need them all, but here's the criteria I use to determine whether or not to buy a pre-made charm. Can I make that charm by hand, and will I use it more than once? To me, this often narrows down the pool immensely, and most of the charms I pick up are things that I cannot make by hand, or it would take a really long time to make by hand, really common shapes like hearts and stars that I will use over and over and over again, and then things like rhinestones, pearls, and anything made of metal. Lastly, don't feel like you're limited by quote-unquote nail charms. You can literally glue anything to a nail. A lot of the same concepts apply for the charms that I made in the molds. I will either apply nail glue or builder gel just under the charm itself or over the entire surface of the nail and then place all of my charms on top. I will make sure all the charms are sealed in and not going to snag on anything, and then sometimes even apply a little bit of builder gel on top of something like a pearl so that the pearl finish doesn't wear off over time as I wear them. Charms can either be placed directly on the nail, built into a silicone mold charm, or embedded into sculpting gel or clay. Throughout this video, I created a teddy bear using each product to illustrate their similarities, weaknesses, and best application techniques for making 3D nails. While I showed each product individually to provide clarity, the real magic happens when you experiment and combine products and techniques. The most creative 3D nail art often emerges from layering and blending methods, building more complex and unique designs. There's rarely a single right product or technique. Different artists might approach the same project in entirely different ways. The more you play with your materials, the better you'll understand their strengths and limitations. Remember, nail art is art. Although the canvas is small, your creative possibilities are endless. Whether you're working with charms, sculpting with acrylics, or exploring Embogels, 3D nail art is all about expressing yourself and pushing creative boundaries. A last note, I don't normally do this, but this video took me months to conceptualize, script, plan, film, and edit, but it's really a video that I wish existed, so I hope you found value in it at the end of all my time and energy. If you did, and you want to see more videos like this, please give the video a like, and if you're really generous, subscribe to my channel so that I know you're out there and appreciate this kind of work, and maybe one day I'll put this kind of time and effort into a video again. Hope you liked it. I'll see you soon.